You know that feeling when your entire world crumbles in the span of 30 seconds? Yeah, well, welcome to my Tuesday night. I'm Matt Harlan, 34 years old, and until about 10 minutes ago, I thought I had my life figured out. Software entrepreneur, decent bank account, beautiful fiancée named Julia Mason, and a wedding planned for next month. The American dream, right? Wrong. Dead wrong. Matt, we need to talk, Julia said, standing in our kitchen wearing that little black dress I bought her for our anniversary. Her blonde hair was perfectly styled, makeup flawless, but her blue eyes looked everywhere except at me. I was hunched over my laptop, debugging code for my latest app. Can it wait? I'm trying to fix this authentication bug before tomorrow's client meeting. No, it can't wait. Her voice had that edge to it, the one she used when dealing with difficult PR clients. I'm postponing our wedding. My fingers froze over the keyboard. What did you just say? You heard me. I'm not sure anymore, Matt. About us, about this whole thing. She gestured vaguely around our upscale downtown apartment, the one we'd spent 2 years decorating together. I closed the laptop slowly, my mind racing. Julia, the wedding is in 4 weeks. We've already sent invitations, booked the venue, ordered flowers. Your mother has been planning this thing like it's a royal coronation. I know. She started pacing, her heels clicking on our hardwood floors. But I need time to think, to figure out what I really want. What you really want. I stood up, feeling like I'd been punched in the gut. We've been together for 3 years, engaged for 8 months. What exactly do you need to figure out? She turned away, looking out our floor-to-ceiling windows at the city lights. I don't know if we're right for each other, Matt. We want different things. Different things? Like what? We've talked about everything. Kids, careers, where we want to live. We agreed on all of it. Did we? Or did I just go along with what you wanted? Her voice was getting sharper now. You make all the decisions, Matt. The apartment, the restaurant we go to, even the wedding venue. You just assume I'll agree with everything. I felt my temper flaring. That's not fair, and you know it. I ask your opinion on everything. You're the one who always says whatever you think is best or I don't care, you decide. Maybe because you never actually listen when I do have an opinion. We stared at each other across the kitchen island, and I realized I was looking at a stranger. This wasn't the Julia who'd said yes when I proposed on the beach in Malibu. This wasn't the woman who'd cried happy tears and called her mother immediately to share the news. Fine, I said quietly. If that's how you feel, maybe we do need to postpone. Something flickered across her face. Relief? Guilt? I couldn't tell anymore. I think I should stay at my parents' house for a while, she said. Give us both some space to think. Sure, whatever you need. She packed a bag while I sat on our couch, staring at the engagement photos on our coffee table. Julia laughing as I spun her around, both of us grinning like idiots. Had she been faking it even then? After she left, I poured myself a bourbon and tried to process what had just happened. My phone buzzed with a notification from our doorbell camera app. Probably a delivery driver or something. I almost ignored it, but curiosity got the better of me. I opened the app and scrolled back through the day's footage. There was Julia leaving this morning for work, the mailman around noon, and then... My blood turned to ice. There was Julia again, but she wasn't alone. My cousin Derek was with her, and they were standing way too close together on our front steps. I watched as he leaned down and kissed her. Not a friendly family kiss, but a full-on, passionate embrace that lasted at least 10 seconds. But that wasn't even the worst part. I kept watching as they pulled apart, and I could read their lips clearly in the high-definition footage. So we're really doing this? Derek asked. The wedding's in 2 weeks, Julia replied, her face glowing with excitement I hadn't seen in months. I can't wait to be Mrs. Derek Harlan. What about Matt? I'll handle Matt. He won't suspect anything until it's too late. They kissed again before Derek walked to his BMW and drove away. Julia had stood there for another minute, checking her phone and smiling before coming inside to break up with me. I rewound the footage and watched it 3 more times, just to make sure I wasn't hallucinating. Nope. My fiancé and my cousin were planning their own wedding while she was postponing ours. I grabbed my phone and called my best friend Nate, a cybersecurity expert who'd helped me build my company's security infrastructure. Matt, it's almost midnight, man. What's wrong? Nate, I need you to come over, now, and bring your laptop. Why? What happened? Before we dive deeper into this story, I have one small request. Please subscribe, drop a like, comment, and hit that hype button to boost this channel so more people can discover these incredible Reddit stories. Julia just broke up with me, and I think she's planning to marry Derek. There was a pause. Derek? Your cousin Derek, the lawyer? The very same. I've got footage, Nate. They're planning a secret wedding. Holy shit. I'll be there in 20 minutes. While I waited for Nate, I poured another bourbon and tried to think. Derek had always been the golden child in our family. 2 years older than me, Harvard Law School, partner at a prestigious firm by 35. He was everything I wasn't. Tall, classically handsome, charming in that effortless way that made people instantly like him. He'd been around a lot lately, supposedly helping with legal paperwork for the wedding. Julia had insisted we needed his help with the prenup and property agreements. I'd thought it was weird, since I had my own lawyers, but Julia had been adamant. Derek knows family law better than anyone, she'd said. And he's family. We can trust him. Trust him. Right. The doorbell rang, and I let Nate in. He took one look at me and whistled low. You look like hell, brother. Nate Rodriguez was my opposite in every way. Short where I was tall, dark where I was fair, laid back where I was intense. We'd been friends since college, and he was the only person I trusted completely. Wait until you see this footage, I said, pulling up the doorbell app on my TV. We watched the video together, and Nate's expression grew darker with each replay. That conniving bitch, he muttered. And Derek. Man, I never liked that guy, but this is low even for him. What am I supposed to do, Nate? They're planning a wedding while she's telling me she needs space to think. We're going to expose them, Nate said, cracking his knuckles. But first, we need more evidence. This video is great, but we need to know everything. When's their wedding? Where? Who knows about it? How do we find that out? Nate grinned, and I recognized that look. It was the same expression he'd worn in college when he'd hacked into the dean's computer to change our friends' grades. Leave that to me. But Matt, you need to be smart about this. Don't confront them yet. Act normal, like you believe Julia's story about needing space. Let them think they're getting away with it. I don't know if I can do that. You have to. Trust me. The revenge will be so much sweeter if they never see it coming. The next morning, I woke up with a hangover and a text from Julia. Thanks for being understanding. I love you, and I hope we can work this out. I stared at the message for a full minute before typing back, Take all the time you need. I love you too. It physically hurt to send those words, but Nate was right. I needed to play along until we had the full picture. I threw myself into work, trying to distract myself from the constant urge to drive to Derek's office and punch him in his perfect teeth. My startup was in the middle of launching a new social media management platform, and I had 3 client meetings scheduled. Around noon, Nate showed up at my office with coffee and a tablet full of information. You're not going to like this, he said, settling into the chair across from my desk. Hit me. I did some digging into Derek's recent activity, credit card records, social media, phone records. Don't ask how I got access to all that. I won't ask. Good, so here's what I found. He turned the tablet toward me. Derek booked a venue in Napa Valley for 2 weeks from Saturday, the Silverado Resort. Very expensive, very exclusive. My stomach dropped. That's the weekend after our original wedding date. Gets worse. He's booked it under the name Harlan Mason Wedding. They're using both your names. What? I think they're planning to tell people that you and Julia broke up, and she fell for Derek during the emotional aftermath. You know, the whole he was there for her during a difficult time story. I leaned back in my chair, feeling sick. That's actually brilliant. Everyone knows Derek's been helping with the wedding planning. It would seem natural for them to get close. There's more. I found email exchanges between Julia and a wedding planner. They've been planning this for at least 3 months, Matt. This isn't some spur-of-the-moment thing. 3 months. While I'd been working 16-hour days to grow my business so we could afford the house Julia wanted, she'd been planning to leave me for my cousin. What else? Guest list of about 50 people. Mostly Derek's law firm colleagues and Julia's PR industry friends. But here's the interesting part. Some of your mutual friends are on the list. Which friends? Tom and Jennifer Bradley, for starters, and Mike Chen from your college crew. I felt like I'd been punched again. Tom and Jennifer had been our couple friends for years. We had dinner with them every month. Mike had been my roommate junior year and was supposed to be a groomsman in my wedding. They know, I said quietly. They all know. And nobody told me? Looks that way. I stood up and walked to my office window, looking down at the street below. People were going about their normal lives, completely unaware that mine had imploded. There's something else, Nate said carefully. I found some texts between Julia and her friend Brianna. Brianna Walsh was Julia's best friend and maid of honor. They'd known each other since college and talked every day. What did they say? Julia told her she's been unhappy with you for over a year. She said you're too focused on work, too controlling, and that Derek makes her feel alive again. Controlling? I turned back to Nate. I gave her everything she wanted. The apartment, the car, the wedding budget that's bigger than most people's annual salary. I know, man. But there's more. She also said... Nate hesitated. Just tell me. She said she never really loved you, that she was with you because you were stable and successful, but Derek is her soulmate. The words hit me like a physical blow. 3 years of my life, reduced to being a stable option while she waited for something better. Show me the texts. Nate handed me the tablet, and I read through the conversation. It was worse than he'd described. Julia had written paragraph after paragraph about how boring I was, how Derek was more exciting, more passionate, more everything. One message made my hands shake with rage. Matt's so predictable. Work, gym, Netflix, repeat. Derek takes me on adventures. He makes me feel like I'm living, not just existing. Adventures? While I'd been building a business to support our future, Derek had been taking her on adventures. I need to see more, I said. Matt, maybe you've seen enough for now. No, I need to know everything. Every lie, every betrayal, every moment she was laughing at me behind my back. Nate sighed but pulled up more files on his tablet. I hacked into her cloud storage. There are photos, more texts, even some voice memos she sent to Brianna. We spent the next 2 hours going through everything. Photos of Julia and Derek at restaurants I'd never been to, romantic getaways I'd never heard about, intimate moments that should have been between us. The voice memos were the worst. Julia's voice, bright and happy in a way I hadn't heard in months, talking about Derek like he was some kind of god. He's everything Matt isn't, she'd said in one memo. Confident, spontaneous, passionate. When Derek kisses me, I forget everything else exists. By the time we finished, I felt hollow inside. The woman I'd planned to marry, the woman I'd thought was the love of my life, had been living a completely separate existence. So what's the plan? I asked. We exposed them at their own wedding, Nate said. Public, humiliating, and completely devastating. How? I'm working on that. But first, we need to make sure we have copies of everything. If they figure out what we know, they might try to destroy the evidence. What about our friends, the ones who are going to their wedding? We'll deal with them too. Anyone who knew about this and didn't tell you isn't really your friend, Matt. That night, I sat in my empty apartment, surrounded by reminders of my relationship with Julia. Wedding magazines on the coffee table, her favorite wine in the fridge, photos of us everywhere. I started taking the photos down, one by one. Each frame felt heavier than the last, weighted with lies and false memories. My phone buzzed with another text from Julia. Missing you tonight. This is harder than I thought it would be. I stared at the message, wondering if she was lying in Derek's bed while she typed it, wondering if they were laughing about how gullible I was. This time, I didn't text back. 2 days later, I decided I couldn't wait for Nate's elaborate revenge plan. I needed answers, and I needed them now. I drove to Derek's law office, a gleaming glass tower downtown that screamed success and money, the kind of place Julia had always been impressed by, unlike my modest startup office in a converted warehouse. Derek's secretary, a middle-aged woman named Mrs. Patterson, greeted me with a smile. Matt, how nice to see you. Derek's in a meeting, but I'm sure he'll want to see you. It's urgent, I said. She buzzed Derek's office, and a moment later, his voice came through the speaker. Send him in, Patricia. Derek's office was exactly what you'd expect from a successful lawyer. Mahogany furniture, law books, expensive art on the walls. Derek himself was sitting behind his massive desk, looking every inch the successful attorney in his tailored suit. Matt, what brings you by? He stood up and came around the desk with his hand extended, that trademark Derek smile on his face. I didn't shake his hand. We need to talk about Julia, I said. Something flickered in Derek's eyes, but his smile never wavered. Of course. I heard about the postponement. I'm sorry, man. That must be tough. Cut the shit, Derek. Now the smile faltered. Excuse me? I know about the wedding. Your wedding. 2 weeks from Saturday at the Silverado Resort. Derek's face went pale, but he recovered quickly. I don't know what you're talking about. I pulled out my phone and showed him the doorbell camera footage. This is from 3 days ago, right before Julia came inside to break up with me. Derek watched the video, his jaw tightening with each second. When it ended, he sat down heavily in his chair. Matt, I can explain. Oh, please do. Explain how my cousin and my fiancée have been planning a wedding behind my back. Explain how you've been screwing the woman I love while helping us with our legal paperwork. It's not what you think. Really? Because what I think is that you're a backstabbing piece of shit who couldn't stand to see me happy. Derek's composure finally cracked. You want to know the truth? Fine. Julia came to me 6 months ago. She was miserable, Matt. Absolutely miserable with you. So you decided to comfort her? She needed someone to talk to, someone who understood what she was going through. And what was she going through, exactly? Derek stood up, his face flushing with anger. You really don't see it, do you? You're so wrapped up in your little tech company that you never paid attention to her. When's the last time you took her somewhere nice? When's the last time you surprised her with anything? I work hard to provide for us, for our future. Your future. Everything was always about what you wanted. The apartment you wanted, the wedding venue you wanted, the honeymoon destination you wanted. Did you ever ask Julia what she wanted? Of course I did. No, you didn't. You asked her to agree with what you'd already decided. I felt a flash of doubt, but pushed it away. Even if that were true, it doesn't justify what you did. You're supposed to be family. Family? Derek laughed bitterly. You've never treated me like family, Matt. You've always looked down on me. What are you talking about? Come on. The golden boy tech entrepreneur with his innovative startup. You love being the family success story, don't you? Poor Derek, just a boring lawyer while Matt's changing the world. I stared at him, genuinely confused. Derek, you make 3 times what I make. You drive a BMW, live in a penthouse, vacation in Europe twice a year. How exactly am I more successful than you? It's not about money. It's about respect, admiration. When we're at family gatherings, who does everyone want to talk to? Who gets the spotlight? You're insane. Am I? Remember last Christmas? Uncle Bob spent an hour asking you about your business while I sat there like furniture. Remember your birthday party? Everyone was congratulating you on your latest client while I was just Derek the lawyer. I realized Derek was serious. He actually believed this twisted version of reality where I was somehow overshadowing him. So, you decided to steal my fiancée to get back at me? I didn't steal her. She chose me. She chose someone who actually appreciates her. By lying to her about who I am? By convincing her I don't care about her? Derek's silence was answer enough. You poisoned her against me, I said quietly. For months, you've been filling her head with lies about how terrible I am. I opened her eyes to the truth. The truth? The truth is that you're a jealous, pathetic man who couldn't stand to see his cousin happy. Derek's face went red. Get out of my office. Gladly. But Derek, this isn't over. Is that a threat? I smiled, and I could see it made him nervous. It's a promise. I walked out of his office, past his secretary, and into the elevator. My hands were shaking with rage, but I also felt something else. Clarity. Derek had manipulated Julia, played on her insecurities, and turned her against me, but Julia had let him. She'd made the choice to believe his lies instead of talking to me directly. They deserved each other. I called Nate from my car. How did it go? He asked. Worse than I thought. Derek's been poisoning Julia against me for months. He's convinced her that I'm some kind of controlling monster. What a piece of shit. Nate, I want to destroy them. Both of them. I want everyone to know exactly what kind of people they are. Now you're talking. I've been working on something special. What kind of special? The kind that will make sure they never show their faces in this town again. That evening, I decided to test the waters with our mutual friends. I started with Tom and Jennifer Bradley, the couple we'd had dinner with just 2 weeks ago. I called Tom's cell phone. Matt, hey man, how are you holding up? Interesting choice of words. I'm okay. Julia and I are taking some time to figure things out. Yeah, Jennifer and I heard. We're sorry, dude. Breakups are tough. Breakups? I kept my voice neutral. We're just postponing the wedding, taking some space. There was a pause. Right, of course. Space is good. Tom, can I ask you something? Sure. Have you talked to Derek lately? Another pause, longer this time. Derek? Your cousin Derek? Not recently, why? He was lying. I could hear it in his voice. Just wondering. He's been helping with some legal stuff, and I thought he might have mentioned the postponement. Oh, no, he hasn't said anything to me? Okay. Well, maybe we can grab dinner soon. The 4 of us. Yeah, maybe. Let me check with Jennifer and get back to you. I hung up, feeling sick. Tom and Jennifer knew. They knew, and they were going to Derek and Julia's wedding instead of telling me the truth. I tried Mike Chen next. Matt, what's up, buddy? Hey, Mike. Just calling to let you know that Julia and I are postponing the wedding. Oh shit, really? That sucks, man. You guys seemed so happy. Mike sounded genuinely surprised, which gave me hope. Maybe not everyone was in on it. Yeah, it's been rough. She needs some space to figure out what she wants. Women, right? They're complicated. But hey, maybe it's for the best. You know what they say, if you love someone, set them free. Have you talked to anyone else about this? Derek, maybe. Derek? No, why would I talk to Derek? Mike sounded genuinely confused, and I felt a small relief. At least one of my friends wasn't betraying me. Just wondering. He's been helping with the legal stuff, so I thought word might have gotten around. Nah, I haven't talked to him in months. But Matt, if you need to talk or grab a beer or whatever, just let me know. Breakups suck. Thanks, Mike. I appreciate it. After I hung up, I made a list of everyone I knew would be at Derek and Julia's wedding. Tom and Jennifer were definitely in on it. Brianna, obviously. Most of Julia's PR friends, who had never liked me anyway. But there were others on the guest list that surprised me. People from Derek's law firm who I'd met at family gatherings. Some of my own extended family members. How many people had known what was happening while I was completely oblivious? My phone rang, interrupting my brooding. It was my father. Dad? Matt, I just talked to your mother. She said Julia moved out? My parents had always liked Julia, though my dad had occasionally made comments about her being high maintenance. My mother, on the other hand, had been planning to welcome Julia into the family like a daughter. Yeah, she needs some space to think about things. Space to think about what? You're getting married in 3 weeks. We're getting married. She postponed it. There was a long silence. My father, retired police detective Robert Harlan, had excellent instincts about people. What aren't you telling me, son? I almost broke down and told him everything, but something held me back. Maybe it was pride, or maybe I just wasn't ready to admit how completely I'd been fooled. It's complicated, Dad. Is there someone else? The question hit me like a punch to the gut. My father's detective instincts were as sharp as ever. Why would you ask that? Because in my experience, when a woman suddenly needs space right before a wedding, there's usually another man involved. I closed my eyes. Maybe. Who? I'm not sure yet. Another lie. I was becoming quite good at them. Matt, if someone's playing games with you, you need to handle it. Don't let people walk all over you. I won't, Dad. Good. Your mother wants to call Julia. Try to talk to her. I told her to stay out of it, but you know how she is. Please don't let her call Julia. Not yet. All right. But Matt, if you need help with anything at all, you call me. Understood? Understood. After I hung up, I sat in my empty apartment and tried to figure out my next move. Nate was working on some kind of technological revenge, but I wanted something more immediate. Something that would hurt them the way they'd hurt me. That's when I remembered the engagement party. 3 months ago, Derek and I had thrown a joint engagement party for Julia and me. It had been Derek's idea, actually. He'd suggested we use his penthouse since it was bigger than our apartment. Julia had been thrilled. I remembered how Derek had given a toast that night, talking about how happy he was for us, how perfect we were together, how he couldn't wait to welcome Julia into the family. The whole time, he'd been planning to steal her away from me. I also remembered how Julia had seemed distracted that night, checking her phone constantly, disappearing for long periods. At the time, I'd thought she was just overwhelmed by all the attention. Now I realized she'd probably been texting Derek. The more I thought about it, the angrier I got. They'd been laughing at me for months. Every family dinner, every double date, every conversation about wedding plans, they'd been putting on an act while planning their own future together. I picked up my phone and called Nate. I want to crash their wedding, I said without preamble. Matt, we've talked about this. We need to be smart about it. I don't want to be smart. I want to humiliate them in front of everyone they care about. And we will. But if you go in there half-cocked, you'll just look like a crazy ex-boyfriend. We need evidence, documentation, proof of everything they've done. I have the doorbell footage. That's a start, but we need more. We need to show everyone that this wasn't some sudden romance that bloomed after your breakup. We need to prove they've been planning this for months. How? Leave that to me. But Matt, I need you to promise me something. What? Don't do anything stupid between now and their wedding. Don't confront Julia, don't show up at Derek's office again, don't try to talk to any more of your friends, just lay low and let me work. Fine, but Nate? Yeah? This better be good, because they destroyed my life, and I want to return the favor. Oh, it'll be good. Trust me. The next week was the longest of my life. I threw myself into work, but every client meeting felt surreal. I was going through the motions of normal life while planning to detonate my entire social circle. Julia texted me every day, maintaining the fiction that she was thinking things through and missing me. Each message made me angrier, but I forced myself to respond with understanding and love. Take all the time you need, babe. I'll be here when you're ready. I love you too. This is just as hard for me. Whatever makes you happy, Julia, that's all I want. The lies came easier each day. Meanwhile, Nate was busy with his preparations. He'd rented surveillance equipment, hacked into more of their private accounts, and even recruited some help from his cybersecurity contacts. You're going to love this, he told me over coffee. I've got everything. Emails, texts, photos, financial records showing Derek's been paying for Julia's spa treatments and shopping trips for months, even hotel receipts from their romantic getaways. What's the plan? We're going to their wedding as guests. I stared at him. How? We weren't invited. No, but Mike Chen was, and he's going to bring a +1. Mike knows? I told him everything yesterday, showed him the evidence. He's pissed, Matt, really pissed. Turns out Julia tried to seduce him at your birthday party last year. What? Yeah. He turned her down, but he said she was pretty aggressive about it. He thought it was just the alcohol, but now he realizes she was already looking for an upgrade. I felt another piece of my world crumble. My birthday party. Julia had disappeared for an hour that night, claiming she was helping in the kitchen. Instead, she'd been hitting on my friend. So, Mike's going to help? He's going to get us into the wedding. After that, it's showtime. What kind of showtime? Nate grinned and pulled out his tablet. I've prepared a little multimedia presentation, photos, videos, text messages, emails, everything they've done, laid out in chronological order, their entire affair, from the first flirtatious text to their wedding planning. How are we going to show it? Derek booked the resort's AV system for a slideshow during the reception. You know, romantic photos of the happy couple, childhood pictures, that kind of thing. I'm going to hack into their system and replace their slideshow with ours. That's brilliant. It gets better. I've also prepared individual packets for each guest, with printed copies of the most damaging evidence. By the time we're done, everyone at that wedding will know exactly what kind of people Derek and Julia are. What about afterward? They'll know it was us? So what? What are they going to do? Sue us for telling the truth? Derek's a lawyer. He knows that everything we're showing is factual and documented. I thought about it for a moment. This could backfire. People might think we're just bitter ex-boyfriends trying to ruin their happiness. That's why the evidence has to be overwhelming. Not just the affair, but the manipulation, the lies, the way they've been playing everyone. By the time people see everything, they'll be disgusted. And if it doesn't work, then we move to plan B. Which is? I'm working on that. The night before the wedding, I barely slept. I kept thinking about Julia, about the woman I'd thought I was going to marry. Had any of it been real? Had she ever actually loved me? Or had I just been a placeholder until something better came along? I thought about Derek, too. My own cousin. We'd grown up together, spent holidays together, shared family memories. How long had he resented me? How long had he been waiting for a chance to hurt me? At 3 a.m., I got up and wrote them both letters. Long, detailed letters explaining how much they'd hurt me, how their betrayal had destroyed my faith in people, how I'd never be able to trust anyone the same way again. Then I deleted them. Words weren't going to fix this. Only action would. The wedding was at 4 p.m., with the reception immediately following. Nate and Mike picked me up at 2 p.m., and we drove to Napa Valley in Mike's car. You sure you're ready for this? Mike asked as we pulled into the resort's parking lot. I've never been more ready for anything in my life. The Silverado Resort was exactly the kind of place Julia had always dreamed of getting married. Elegant, expensive, with manicured gardens and a view of the vineyards. It should have been our wedding venue. We walked into the lobby, and I saw several familiar faces. Tom and Jennifer Bradley were checking in at the front desk. Brianna was directing a group of bridesmaids toward the bridal suite. Derek's law partners were gathered around the bar, already drinking. None of them noticed me. The ceremony's in the garden, Nate whispered. Reception's in the main ballroom. I need about 10 minutes to access their AV system. Go, I said. Mike and I will keep watch. Nate disappeared toward the back of the resort while Mike and I found seats in the garden. The wedding setup was beautiful. White chairs arranged in perfect rows, an arch covered in flowers, a string quartet playing soft music. It was exactly what Julia and I had planned for our wedding. At 4 p.m. sharp, the music changed, and Derek appeared at the front of the garden with the officiant. He looked nervous but happy, adjusting his tie and scanning the crowd. His eyes found mine, and his face went white. I smiled and gave him a little wave. The bridesmaids started their procession down the aisle, Julia's sister, her cousin, and Brianna. They were all wearing the same dresses Julia had picked out for our wedding, just in a different color. Then the music swelled, and Julia appeared. She was breathtaking. Her dress was different from the one she'd chosen for our wedding. More elaborate, more expensive. Her hair was perfectly styled, her makeup flawless. She looked like a fairy tale princess. She also looked genuinely happy in a way I hadn't seen in months. As she walked down the aisle, her eyes swept over the crowd, acknowledging friends and family. When she saw me, she stumbled slightly, her bouquet shaking in her hands. But she kept walking. The ceremony was beautiful and heartfelt. Derek and Julia had written their own vows, and they spoke about finding true love, about being soulmates, about overcoming obstacles to be together. "Julia," Derek said, his voice carrying clearly across the garden, "you saved me from a life of settling for less than extraordinary. You showed me what real love feels like." "Derek," Julia replied, tears streaming down her face, "you rescued me from a future that would have made me miserable. You gave me the courage to choose happiness." Every word was a knife in my chest, but I kept smiling. When the officiant pronounced them husband and wife, they kissed passionately while the crowd erupted in applause. Julia was glowing with joy as they walked back down the aisle together. She didn't look at me again. "That was hard to watch," Mike murmured. "It's about to get easier," I replied. The cocktail hour was torture. I watched Derek and Julia pose for photos, accept congratulations, and bask in the attention. Several people came up to me, surprised to see me there. "Matt, I didn't know you were coming," Jennifer Bradley said, looking confused. "Wouldn't miss it," I replied. "Derek's family, after all." "But I thought, with the breakup and everything." "Ancient history," I said. "I'm happy for them." Jennifer looked like she wanted to ask more questions, but Tom appeared and dragged her away. At 6 p.m., everyone moved into the ballroom for dinner and dancing. The room was gorgeous. Crystal chandeliers, elegant table settings, a dance floor surrounded by round tables. Derek and Julia sat at the head table with their wedding party, looking like royalty surveying their kingdom. I was seated at a table in the back with Mike and some of Derek's law firm colleagues I didn't know. Dinner was served, speeches were made, and the happy couple had their first dance. Julia looked radiant in Derek's arms, and I had to admit they looked good together. Then it was time for the slideshow. "Ladies and gentlemen," the DJ announced, "the bride and groom have prepared a special presentation sharing their love story." The lights dimmed and a large screen descended from the ceiling. I felt my heart racing as the first image appeared. It was a photo of Derek and Julia at a restaurant, clearly on a date. The timestamp showed it was from 6 months ago, 2 months before Julia had started complaining about our relationship. A murmur went through the crowd. This wasn't the typical wedding slideshow. The next image was a screenshot of a text message from Julia to Derek. "I can't wait to get rid of Matt. He's so boring compared to you." The murmur became a buzz of confused voices. More images followed in rapid succession. Photos of Derek and Julia on romantic getaways, screenshots of their planning emails for this wedding, hotel receipts, credit card statements showing Derek paying for Julia's expenses. And then came the doorbell camera footage. The audio was crystal clear as Julia and Derek discussed their plan to deceive me. The room fell completely silent as everyone watched my fiancé and my cousin plot against me. "Oh my God," someone whispered. The final image was a screenshot of Julia's text to Brianna. "Matt never has to know about any of this. By the time he figures it out, Derek and I will be married, and it'll be too late." The screen went black, and the lights came back up. The silence in the room was deafening. Every single person was staring at Derek and Julia, who sat frozen at the head table like deer in headlights. Then the whispers started. "Did you know about this? How long has this been going on? That poor man. This is disgusting." Derek stood up slowly, his face red with anger and embarrassment. "This is a private family matter," he said loudly. "Someone has violated our privacy and—" "Violated your privacy?" I stood up, and every head in the room turned toward me. "You mean like you violated my trust? Like you violated my relationship?" The room was so quiet you could hear a pin drop. "You're my cousin, Derek, my family, and you." I looked at Julia, who was crying now. "You're supposed to be the woman I love. Was any of it real? Any of it?" Julia opened her mouth to speak, but no words came out. "You want to know what's really sick?" I continued, my voice carrying clearly across the ballroom. "You could have just broken up with me. You could have been honest. Instead, you chose to lie, to manipulate, to make me think I was crazy for suspecting something was wrong." I reached into my jacket and pulled out a stack of papers, copies of the evidence Nate had prepared. "But don't take my word for it," I said, starting to distribute the packets to nearby tables. "Here's everything. Every lie, every secret meeting, every plan to deceive me. Read it yourselves." People grabbed the papers eagerly, and I could see their expressions change as they read. Shock, disgust, anger. "Matt, please," Julia finally found her voice. "It wasn't supposed to happen like this." "How was it supposed to happen, Julia? You were going to string me along until after your honeymoon? Keep me as a backup plan in case things didn't work out with Derek?" "No, that's not... Save it." I looked around the room at all the people who had known, who had kept their secret, who had let me be humiliated. You all deserve each other. I started walking toward the exit, but Derek's voice stopped me. "You think you're so perfect, don't you, Matt?" His face was twisted with rage. "You think everyone should worship you just because you started a little tech company?"
I turned back to face him. "This isn't about my business, Derek. This is about you being a lying, manipulative piece of shit who couldn't stand to see me happy." "Happy? You made her miserable. You ignored her, took her for granted, treated her like an accessory to your perfect life. And you were so much better, sneaking around behind my back, poisoning her against me, planning a wedding while I was planning mine. The room was watching our confrontation like a tennis match, heads turning back and forth between us." "She chose me," Derek said.
"She chose me because I'm better than you in every way that matters." I laughed, and the sound was harsh in the silent ballroom. "You're right, Derek. You are better than me. You're better at lying, better at backstabbing, better at betraying family. Congratulations." I looked at Julia one last time. She was sobbing now, her perfect makeup ruined, her fairy tale wedding turned into a nightmare. "I hope you're happy together," I said. "You deserve exactly what you're going to get." And then I walked out. Mike and Nate were waiting for me in the parking lot, both grinning like idiots. "Dude, that was epic," Mike said. "Did you see their faces?" "The whole room turned on them," Nate added. "People were getting up and leaving before we even got outside." I looked back at the resort, where I could see people streaming out of the ballroom. Derek and Julia's perfect wedding had become the scandal of the year. "It's over," I said. "How do you feel?" Nate asked. I thought about it for a moment. The anger was still there, and the hurt, but there was something else too. Relief. Freedom. The weight of their deception was gone, replaced by the satisfaction of truth revealed. "I feel like I dodged a bullet," I said finally. "The biggest bullet of my life." We drove back to the city in comfortable silence, and I realized something. I wasn't the same man who had discovered that doorbell camera footage 2 weeks ago. That man had been naive, trusting, willing to believe the best in people. This man knew better. As we pulled into my apartment building, I made a decision. Tomorrow, I would start over. New apartment, new friends, new life. Derek and Julia could have each other and the wreckage of their reputations. I was done being their victim. I was ready to be the hero of my own story. The end. Don't forget to hit like, subscribe, and turn on the bell so you don't miss the next story. Write in the comments from which city you are watching.